This is the second lecture for week 5 of World Geography, and it covers Central Asia. Learning objectives for the chapter are found on the next 4 slides. Here are key concepts for this chapter. Notable are steppes, desertification, which we've covered elsewhere, pastoralists, the Silk Road, which is an historical phenomenon, the Taliban, the Dalai Lama. Here are the nations involved in Central Asia. Kazakhstan, and there are a lot of stans. Stan is Persian for land of. So Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Afghanistan, Mongolia, Azerbaijan, and 3 regions of China: Tibet, Xinjiang, and Inner Mongolia. As with the Wiesent from the previous PowerPoint, I want to introduce a rare animal. This is pronounced Przewalski's horse, native to Mongolia, and the last remaining breed of wild horse. The wild Mustangs of Nevada are domesticated horses that have become feral or wild, but this is a true wild horse, and there are not many of them left. As you can see here, about 250 left in the wild. And they give you a good idea of what ancient horses, the horses perhaps that the Indo-Europeans appear to have domesticated. They give you a picture of what those horses looked like. In Mongolia are the Duka, who herd reindeer. And I thought this was a great picture. But even the Duka, following trends of others around the world, are moving toward urbanization. This slide notes that Central Asia is really a landlocked region in the center of the Eurasian continent. 5 of the nations listed before were once part of the Soviet Union. They are now independent republics. Historically, a famous area for connecting the West and the East, especially along the Silk Road. Here's a map of the physical geography of Central Asia, and it stretches all the way from the Caspian Sea in the west to Mongolia in the east. And note that Russia runs along the northern part of this region. Below it in the southwest is Iran and the Middle East, and then Pakistan and India of the Indian subcontinent directly to the south, and then China to the southeast. Major areas include the Tibetan Plateau in the central part, south central part. The steppes are the great grasslands that dominate so much of the geography of this region, but also there are the mountains and the Tibetan Plateau, which is very high, and the deserts. Much of this region is very dry, and one of the great environmental issues is the disappearance of the Aral Sea. The area is not strongly populated, except in a few places, and of note is the area of Uzbekistan and populations in the river valleys. Of course, civilization in most places began where rivers are located. For a long time, the steppes of Central Asia have been inhabited and utilized by pastoralists. This slide compares the population growth and stability of Afghanistan and Azerbaijan. And Afghanistan has that very nicely formed pyramid which indicates strong population growth, which you don't see so much in the Azerbaijan population pyramid. The next slide, in fact, gives us the total fertility rate between these two. Afghanistan is high. Azerbaijan is just barely over the 2.1 figure needed for natural population growth. Here are two cities, one old and historical, the other one modern. On the left is Samarkand, a major city of the leader Tamerlane. Central Asia, for all of its harsh dryness and sparse population, is actually historically important. It connected the East and the West, and roaming this vast territory were various groups of pastoralists, even horsemen. The next few slides look at the historical impact of the great Mongol Empire. In the West, often the Crusades are seen as a great medieval struggle between European Christianity and Islam in the Near East. But after the Crusades, something far worse befell the world of Arab Islam. These few slides cover that. This slide gives a timeline of the Mongol invasion of the Middle East. It also notes how Christians were associated with the Mongols to some extent, and therefore how one can understand later tension between Muslims and Christians because of this great invasion event. Samarkand has the tomb of Tamerlane. Greatly influential were certain Mongol leaders. The earliest and most famous is Genghis Khan, and then his grandson Kublai Khan, who became ruler of China. And it was during that period that Marco Polo visited China and even took up a government position under Kublai Khan. You have Samarkand and its association with Tamerlane and with the Silk Road. And even the influence was felt down into India. Many famous nomads and horsemen are associated with Central Asia, as early as the Scythians, and later Turkic peoples, so many roamed this territory. Islam is a dominant religion in much of Central Asia and in Afghanistan. In the 1990s, after the Soviets pulled out of Afghanistan, there emerged the Taliban, who imposed a very strict Islamic rule. While Islam tends to dominate much of Central Asia as far as religion, in Tibet and in Mongolia can be found Tibetan Buddhism, where the leading figure is the Dalai Lama. As was noted before, after the Soviets pulled out of Afghanistan, the Taliban emerged in the 1990s, and Afghanistan became a haven for terrorists such as the group Al-Qaeda. And after 9/11, the U.S. launched a war in Afghanistan. Though a U.S. war in Afghanistan has officially ended, the future of Afghanistan remains indefinite.